This is Tornado Talk, a weekly podcast about one of nature's most fascinating phenomenons. Share your tornado story online by email or call us toll-free 800-439-1570. That's 800-439-1570. Now, meteorologist Jennifer Naramore and Dan Holliday, Tornado Talk is on.
Tornado season in May gets underway.
Twisters touch down in 9 states: Arkansas, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas.
A tall and dusty tornado rumbled its way north of Wray, Colorado. Forever Chasing's Justin Dean was there.
The people of Wray, I think, got really lucky that day. I believe it was their prom that night.
The twister was so photogenic that Charlie Bator and his prom date Allie posed for a picture in front of it. That went viral online.
I don't know what made it happen. I guess it was just luck. The tornado kind of came back and it didn't die right away, and we went and stood in front of it and took our picture.
May 9th, 18th confirmed tornadoes in Nebraska, Texas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Warning coordinating meteorologist Rick Smith.
When I got to work that morning, I never imagined we'd be doing a tornado emergency that day.
Atoka, Oklahoma radio station KHKC takes a direct hit from a tornado. Manager Ricky Chase.
I thought the building would be safe. It was a cinder block building, but cinder block walls and full of concrete, and it wasn't as safe as we thought it would be.
And his daughter, Brittany.
And the next thing we know, it blew the glass out of it. So me and him both jumped underneath his desk that he has at the radio station.
Near Katy, Oklahoma, a twister does EF4 damage. Storm chasers Darin, Brunin, and Dick McGowan are there.
And it looks like it misses this farm, but we didn't know that there was another house on the other side. And then you can see all this debris go in the air, and Darin is saying, "Oh no, please don't hit this farm."
This is Tornado Talk, a recent review of storms, survivors, and their stories from tornadoes that occurred between May 7th and May 10th, 2016.
While the tornado did EF1 damage to buildings in Pike County, Indiana, many eyes were fixed on what happened in the high plains. The twister near Wray, Colorado was no doubt the most photogenic of Saturday, May 7th. In all, there were 8 tornadoes across the state, including a large, multiple vortex that tossed several RVs and injured 2 near Wiggins, Colorado. That was rated an EF2.
The tornado that touched down north of Wray was also an EF2. Winds were estimated at 130 miles per hour. It stayed on the ground for 8 miles and at one time was about 4 football fields wide. The tornado continued on its path for 25 minutes, finally lifting at 6:16 p.m. Mountain Time.
Bryce Kintai, Terrence Danker, and Justin Dean with Forever Chasing might not have made their drive from Wichita, Kansas to eastern Colorado. But when you have no other plans, why not? Justin told us how the day unfolded.
This particular chase ended up being on a Saturday, and we really didn't have anything better to do that day. And I was already up. I was up at like 4:30 that morning. So Bryce shot me a text about 7 saying, "Hey, do you want to go to Colorado?" I was like, why not? Don't have anything else going on that day. So we left Wichita about 7 in the morning and made that 7-hour trek up to northeastern Colorado. We were north of Lyman for a little while. Was just waiting on storm development to happen. And I think there were a couple of tornadoes to the northeast of the Denver metro area. And we just thought those are just a little bit too far out of reach. We didn't want to get up into the mountains and into the worst terrain of Colorado. So we stuck around Yuma County and noticed a storm coming up north of Lyman. And we noticed there was an outflow boundary just to the north of Wray. It's like, well, if this storm can get up into this more favorable environment, it might actually do something up here. So we sat in Wray for a while, and there were a lot of chasers on that storm. So there was a tornado, there was a brief tornado just to the north of Wray before the big one that we caught about an hour later. I don't think it did much damage, and it stayed away from town. But then the bigger storm that was down by Lyman moved up into that environment, and it got attached to that outflow boundary. And as you saw, it did damage just to the north of town. And the people of Wray, I think, got really lucky that day. I believe it was their prom that night. And just going through town, everybody in town was just out taking a look at the storm. It was a very beautiful storm. Unfortunately, it did the damage to the north of town, but you get up into Colorado, part of the reason that we went, you get to the lee side of the Rockies, that's just prime territory for storms. The terrain effects can override those less than desirable atmospheric conditions because, in the plains you need 60, 70 degrees to get tornadoes out here. That's not the case in Colorado. You get a low to mid-50s dew, and you get a storm that can attach itself to an outflow boundary, and the high plains magic, as storm chasers like to call it, can happen, and that's exactly what happened just north of Wray there.
The images of that tornado are online at tornadotalk.com. But you might also have seen the twister on social media when high school students Charlie Bator and his girlfriend Allie were about to head to prom. The two grabbed a cameo shot with a tornado right behind them. It turned out to be a case of being in the right place at the right time.
I had a track meet that day, and then I had to go to work. And then on my way after work around 6 o'clock, I was headed up to Wray to go to Allie's prom. And I noticed it was kind of stormy and stuff. I got up there. There were storm chasers all over. There's a little valley called the Black Wolf, and there was storm chasers all over up there. And I was thinking that's kind of weird. It didn't really look like it was going to storm really bad. And then I got to Allie's, and the wind started to pick up, and it started to hail. And then the alarm for the tornado went off. And we all started to go back towards inside because we were getting ready to take some prom pictures and take off to go eat. And then after that, the alarm just shut off. It was dead silent, and then the wind started picking up really, really fast. And I could lean over into the wind at a 45-degree angle and could stay upright because of that wind. And then it just stopped, and it was dead silent. And then the clouds went away, and the tornado went away, or the beginnings of the tornado went away. And then after that, it picked up 3 miles north of us. And we started watching it, and we watched it, and I got it all on video and stuff. And it started to go away, and then the tornado siren came back on for just a blip of a second. And then after that, we went back outside, and the tornado was starting to go away. And then Allie's mom, Heidi, said, "Oh, we should have got a picture in front of that tornado." I don't know what made it happen. I guess it was just luck. The tornado kind of came back, and it didn't die right away, and we went and stood in front of it and took our picture.
Charlie and Allie posted the image on Facebook, but had no idea it would go viral worldwide.
No. They just thought it was another profile picture that was just any other profile picture that we've ever put on either of our Facebooks. So we really weren't expecting it. It was definitely one for the books. It's one that I'll remember for the rest of my life for sure.
Sunday, May 8th. Strong storms spread across Kansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. In fact, Jen, we were on the air live with our radio partners in Hays, Kansas, doing severe weather coverage as a strong tornado caused EF2 damage to outbuildings and high-voltage transmission lines near Catherine, Kansas.
On Monday, May 9th, the afternoon turned much more violent. Tornadoes were on the ground in Nebraska, Arkansas, Texas, and the hardest-hit state, Oklahoma. Warning coordinating meteorologist Rick Smith at the National Weather Service in Norman said the weather setup for the day was not that unusual for May in the Sooner State.
Well, the weather setup on May 9th was one that's not that unusual for Oklahoma in May. And we had a dry line that was sitting out in western Oklahoma. And I guess one of the small scale variables that played a role that day was some outflow from some earlier thunderstorms down in Texas. That this boundary was moving north up through southern Oklahoma, and we had the moisture that really returned into the state. We look at dew point temperatures to kind of measure the humidity in the air. Meteorologists do, and so we were seeing readings in the mid and upper 60s, and then we started to see some lower 70 dew points, which even in Oklahoma in May, that's some muggy air. So the fuel was there, and when we got the storms develop along the dry line in the mid afternoon, they became severe very, very quickly. So it was not an uncommon set of ingredients, but you never expect to see tornadoes quite that intense.
Storm chaser Darin Brunin insisted to his chase partner Dick McGowan that south central Oklahoma would be a prime spot for tornado activity on May 9th. The two set out to see nature in action. Darin said they captured video of the first tornado near Wynnewood, Oklahoma.
It was a crazy tornado that started off pretty tame, and then eventually it just started. You could start to see a lot of multiple vortices underneath it, and them doing their thing. It was pretty fast, and then crossed the road right in front of us, and then became that classic violent tornado that had that jet engine / waterfall roar with it. We knew that meant business really at that point.
Dick McGowan said their anxiety rose when the strong tornado approached farms. The two chasers feared residents might be inside, or worse, didn't know what was about to hit them.
We were watching the tornado as it's approaching these farms. Before that, we had debris kind of raining down on us, tree debris. You can't really see it in the video. So we're watching for debris the whole time, make sure that, pieces of sheet metal is not going to fall on us or anything. But this motion on this tornado, I've never seen anything like it. And it's got these, sub-vortices within the parent tornado that are moving really fast. And, they're, friction within the ground. They're really, really intense. And it looks like it misses this farm, but we didn't know that there was another house on the other side. And then you can see all this debris go in the air, and Darin is saying, "Oh no, please don't hit this farm!" And
no, please don't hit that farm. Holy!
The tornado, it comes up to the road, and it looks like it's going to cross, and it does cross, but then it's almost like it wobbled back south of the road. It's like it wanted to hit these farms, and then it wobbled back south of the road, and then it would go a little further east, and then it would go and hit like another farm, and then wobble back, and it finally would go east or north of the road. But it was some of the most intense motion I have ever seen. From about 100 to 150 yards away, you could hear the roar. It sounds like a waterfall almost, and a roar, like a low thunder. And you can see all this debris and these trees, like whole trees, just getting wafted into the air, and then you can see like the actual roots from the trees, these whole trees, hanging and getting swung around, in the air, like hundreds of feet. We go a little east, and these other chasers go ahead of us. We didn't immediately see this farm that was to the right, because it was kind of up on a hill and hidden behind these other trees.
Oh no! It's hitting that farm! No! Oh no! Oh no!
So we go a little further, and the road ends because there's the debris blocked the road. There was some mangled truck right next to us. So we turn around, and I now see that this on top of this hill, but all I can see is this mangled debris. And Darin immediately just jumps out of the car, and Darin, without even thinking of it, runs full blast up this hill, is immediately in search and rescue mode, and there's nobody else around that's stopped yet. But luckily, the mailbox survived, and I see the address of the home that's been hit, and there's nothing left. It's been wiped off the foundation. The whole house has been moved, a house worth probably 100 feet off the foundation. All the rubble is kind of scattered eastward. When I get up there too, I tweet to the National Weather Service where my location is, and said we needed help. And then the Elmore Fire Department shows up, and we start looking, and Darin's found a dog. He hands it to me, and I go put it in my car, and we start looking through the rubble. And all I see are these dolls and these kids' toys, and I'm like, God, please don't be any children in here. And this old baby doll is laying out there. It looks like a little girl. And then J.R. Henley, another storm chaser, shows up too and starts helping. And these guys were yelling, "Is anybody in here? Anybody in here?" And I heard what I thought was a moan, and it ended up being a dog. And we're like, "Hello, hello." And we pull out another dog, and I go put him back in my car. And we're looking, and the only place they could have survived was in the center of the house, in the bathroom, and that was a maybe if they had something covering them. And we're like, there's not going to be any survivors. This is really bad. And we're pulling stuff up for about 20 or 30 minutes, and I hear a lady scream, and I go down there, and she's like, where's my babies? Where's my babies? I'm like, what are you talking about? I have your two dogs. And she says, I have 7 of them. And she drops to her knees, and I immediately thought of my animals that I have, and I broke down with her and told her I was sorry, and her husband was there comforting her. And she said she needed her cane and her wheelchair and her car, and her van, but I told her her van was okay, just the windows were blown out. So they went and retrieved her wheelchair and stuff. And then by this time, there's all kinds of first responders, and they blocked off the road with the police and everything. We had a talk with I let her sit in my car for a little bit, and she said, "Why me? Why me? I just lost a daughter and all of her stuff's inside, and why does this keep happening to me?" They'd just left their house to go get hay for their animals. They had a bunch of farm animals too, like goats, donkeys, and she was asking about them, and I said, "I didn't know where they were." And
the tension was high at the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. Two communities, Roth and Hickory, Oklahoma, were in immediate danger with a large tornado headed their way. That's when Rick Smith and staff issued a tornado emergency.
When I got to work that morning, I never imagined we'd be doing a tornado emergency that day, to be quite honest, but we did. There are rules, I guess, or guidelines that the Weather Service has set forth on, criteria or guidelines of when you issue those. But a lot of it just comes down to almost it when you see it. What we had in this situation was a large tornado, by all accounts, from the media who were providing us with reports, from all the storm chasers who were graciously providing reports through Spotter Network and all the other ways we have to get information. This was a big tornado. The visibility wasn't that great. It was hard to see. And while it was in fairly rural areas, even one house in a rural area, that one house is important. So we thought that if this truly is a mile-wide tornado that's capable of being in the upper end of the enhanced Vegeta scale damage-wise, those small towns deserve just as much warning and just as much heads up as we can give them. So the decision to actually do a tornado emergency in this particular case wasn't really that difficult. We had never done one for very tiny communities like that before, but once we saw what the tornado was capable of doing, then it became a pretty easy decision.
As the news grew out of Oklahoma, so did the talk of an anticyclonic tornado. Rick Smith explains how they discovered it on radar and what an anticyclonic tornado is.
Most tornadoes here in the United States, this hemisphere, spin cyclonically or counterclockwise, like they're an area of low pressure. When we have an anticyclonic tornado, it's spinning in the other direction, and we saw the signature of this anticyclonic tornado on radar. It was a strong signature. These are not rare. These have happened in many other events, and it's quite possible that they happen more often than we even know, just on a smaller scale. What made this one unusual was the strength of the radar signature that we saw with this one. I mean, it really stood out as obvious that there was this rotation there, but it was rotating in the opposite direction as the big tornado down to the south or west of it. And then it was in existence for quite some time. Some of these anticyclonic tornadoes aren't there very long, but this one is there for. We're still kind of analyzing some of the data, and there's still some questions about exactly how long it was on the ground, but several miles at least. So it made it an unusual event. While it's not rare, we have seen them before. This one had a couple of special characteristics that made it stand out.
Ricky Chase has been the manager of KHKC Radio near Atoka, Oklahoma since 1986. After 30 years of living in the hotbed of Tornado Alley, he never expected to ride out an actual tornado. But on May 9th, he and his daughter Brittany weathered the storm.
I thought the building would be safe. It was a cinder block building with cinder block walls and full of concrete, and it wasn't as safe as we thought it would be. I never thought we would be hit, but I knew exactly where I would go if it did. In fact, I had my daughter, she was already in our what we call a hidey hole. It's under a front desk. There's a cinder block wall that's built into, and the cinder block wall probably about 4 feet behind it, so you're kind of in a box with a foot-thick concrete ceiling on top of you. So we knew we were going to be pretty safe unless it would be an F5. I think it would take an F5 to knock that building off the block.
After damaging the radio station, this twister would be rated an EF1. Ricky Chase's daughter, Brittany, was also at KHKC that day.
I went in the radio station, and he said, "Hey, come out here. There's one out in the field like you said we wanted to see." I said, "Oh, okay." Well, there was one went down, and then we saw a couple different ones, and then there was like probably 4 or 5, maybe 6. And it all turned into one great big huge one out of nowhere, and we thought it had turned and went to like it was going to go towards Lehigh, which is right there by Colgate. So he said, okay, I'm fixing to have to go in and give a warning. Well, about the time he said I'm fixing to have to go give a warning, it turned and came towards us, and he was like, okay, well, it's not going to go towards them now. And we could tell the power was out. So he was like, I can't give a warning anyway. So we just stood there and watched it, and it kept getting closer and closer and closer. We were just videoing it.
This is a very massive tornado. It's approximately a mile wide behind the radio station. Huge tornado on the ground. And I'm going to stay here not much longer because it appears to be coming toward the radio station. It may just miss us, but it's going to be a close miss.
And he has a video on his phone where he says,
in fact, it's now within a half a mile and time for us to go. Goodbye.
It's time to go. So I went in the station, and he stood outside a little while longer and watched it. Like, we watched it lift his truck up like 3 or 4 times. And then the next thing we know, it blew the glass out of it. So me and him both jumped underneath his desk that he has at the radio station. I heard glass break, and he heard glass break, and he goes, there goes my truck. And I said, nope, there goes the front of the radio station. He's like, I don't think so. I was like, yeah, that was pretty loud crash just for it to be your truck.
Ricky Chase said the station was back on the air within 72 hours because the tower wasn't damaged.
Okay, we're inside the radio station. We just took a direct hit. The front of the building is gone. My truck's extreme damage.
Ricky Chase and his daughter were okay, and even though they joked as they rode out the strong winds from the tornado, they were thankful to be alive. After emerging from what was left of KHKC, the two sifted through damage and found something unusual.
One of the weird things that happened, we have an air conditioner that's built into a wall. The tornado blew the air conditioner out of the wall. It took a 4-foot light fixture, took the bulb out of the 4-foot fixture, sucked it out the hole the air conditioner was in, the bulb was in the backyard, unbroken.
What is your tornado tale? If you have a story you'd like to share, call us toll-free 800-439-1570. That's 800-439-1570.
Rick Smith at the National Weather Service said survey teams came to their conclusion of how strong the storms that day were.
We ended up with a violent tornado west of I-35 near the community of Katy. This would be south and southwest of Oklahoma City. It was rated an EF4 on the Enhanced Regina scale. Those are exceptionally rare. Less than 2% of tornadoes, even here in Oklahoma, ever get that intense. So to have that tornado was rare. Actually, the longer track tornado that was a mile wide, that was potentially more intense wind speed wise, was rated an EF3, and that was because in order to rate a tornado, we can only rate a tornado based on the damage that it produces. And that's what the survey teams are looking at, is they're analyzing structures, trees, anything that the tornado hit to try to come up with an estimate of how fast the winds might have been blowing. So those were the two most significant tornadoes. We had another EF3 tornado that happened from a separate storm further to the south. But all in all, we had at least 7 tornadoes just in our area from that one event, and actually had a small tornado over the lake here, just not too far east of the Weather Service office here. So it was definitely a busy afternoon. But those survey teams played a critical role in helping us get an estimate of the intensity. We'll never know how fast the winds are blowing for sure in those tornadoes, but we know while there was loss of life, while there was destruction, while people's lives were changed forever, we're very, very fortunate that none of these tornadoes went through more densely populated areas. They narrowly missed cities and towns all across south central Oklahoma, and we're grateful for that, but we're also mindful that May 9th changed a lot of people's lives in southern Oklahoma forever.
The active pattern continued on May 10th as several tornadoes struck western Kentucky, including one that injured 10 people as it moved through the north edge of Mayfield, destroying numerous homes, vehicles, and businesses. It was rated an EF3. Another tornado caused EF2 damage near Hartford, Kentucky.
You've got mail.
Dan Aaron Graves with Dalhart Cloud Chasing has an email with a question for Rick about mobile radar and the EF scale. He writes, Dear Jen and Dan, first let me say I have thoroughly enjoyed every episode of your podcast. Please do not stop doing it. Does the EF scale use radar data in determining a tornado's strength? If not, why? And will the EF scale be modified in the future to include radar data? I ask because the issue has come up again over the May 9th tornadoes in Oklahoma. Apparently, a Doppler on wheels truck measured EF5 wind speeds, but the damage on the ground was rated EF4. A similar thing happened with the El Reno tornado, which got an EF3 when Dow trucks measured EF5 winds. My humble, uneducated opinion is that Fujita was classifying tornadoes by strength using the only thing he had available at the time, physical damage. If the intent of the scale is to figure out a tornado's true strength, why not incorporate radar data? To the public, which generally doesn't know about the work that went into the updated EF scale or the technical aspects of how mobile radars work, it seems like there is confusion on the part of researchers. I've tried reading up on the topic, but usually I find hard to grasp academic papers. Hearing from some experts on this subject who can explain the concepts involved would be awesome. Thanks, Aaron Graves.
And we'll turn to Rick Smith for some insight.
There is a large group of experts, engineers, meteorologists, others that are looking at things like that are looking at, what's next for the EF scale, or there are other things that could be changed with it, and I know that that's a big topic of discussion. I don't know where it's going to go or what's going to happen, but just my personal opinion, I think, whether you rate the tornado based on that or not, you certainly need to account for it. And, some have proposed, have two scales, have a radar scale and a damage scale. So you could end up with something like R2D2, with radar indicated it was a EF2 and damage indicated it was an EF2. So there's nothing official that I've heard that's moving forward with that, but there's a lot of discussion, and there is a real recognition within the scientific community that's going to need to be accounted for. There are more mobile radars now than just out in Oklahoma. I mean, there was the Vortex Southeast experiment that went on. The University of Alabama Huntsville has a mobile radar, I believe. So, it's something that we're going to have to address somehow, and I think it is being addressed, but I don't know where we're headed with it.
Dan, as we look back to the stormy start of May 2016, the victims who were affected may have to build new homes, replace treasured belongings, and in some cases start all over again. Dick McGowan recalls what he told those who went through the violent tornado near Katy on May 9th.
They were alive, these people, they're alive. I told her that. I was like, you know what, you're alive. You're breathing. Everything can be replaced, Another dog had came home Sunday night, but they found 6 of the 7 dogs that they had. But several of their farm animals had to be put down. But the community has rallied around them. They said the support has been so overwhelming. They're one of their donkeys is like a rock star, he told me now on the news. And he told me that an Oklahoma State vet actually is taking on all their animals and caring for them free, pro bono. So that makes me happy. And after a disaster, you always see, in emergency situations like that and disasters, it's great to see these different walks of life come together and help each other out, and seeing humanity at its finest.
This has been Tornado Talk, powered by thestormreport.com.